Hello everyone. Welcome to the YouTube Model Builders Thursday Night General Hangout. Thursday's Hangouts are for the general discussion on model railroading that we all can set a topic to discuss for the night. Thursday's Hangouts are the proud sponsor of the Tuesday night presentations, the YouTube Model Builders, eMag, and the YouTube Model Builders live show. I want to say thanks for everybody joining in tonight's show. And here's your host for the night, Johnny Reb of Southeast Rails. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Well, like they say, change is about to come. We're already starting here at YouTube Model Builders. We got us a new YouTube Model Builders splash page. We're trying to change a few things around, get a little more new look, and update everything. So I'd like to give a few comments on what people think about this. This is one of the graphics that one of our own has done. Named Dan. He comes into the nightly chats. He's done a pretty good job here. He's got a couple more he's working on for us too. So just I'll give you guys a look see at what we got coming now. Alright, let's get it transitioned. How y'all doing on the panel there? Jim?
Doing good.
Yeah, how about you, Ron?
No complaints. No complaints.
What good is complaint?
I wouldn't listen to it, no way.
It's like a rocking chair. It'll give you something to do, but not benefit anything.
Not get you anywhere, that's right.
So how you doing, Andy?
No complaints. No. It's Thursday. I'm in the trade room.
I think we got an echo in here or something. Josh, you doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting a few up here in the panel tonight. We got Greg, Ari, David, another Greg. Oh, Greg G. He's just saying hello to everybody again. Troy, James, and John. So how you doing, Ron? He just come in from Australia. We'll probably get the Canadian invasion in here too a little later on. So,
I don't know. They might have a sore spot right now. Our women beat them in hockey this week, and our men beat them at their beloved curling last night. So,
uh-oh.
You know, they may be holding a grudge. Maybe not.
So that's where grudge matches came from?
Curling, yeah.
Yeah, Ron said he's doing good now that his work week is over.
Me too, Ron. Me too.
Got him a weekend. Yeah, we ain't got too much longer. It's going to be spring anyway, so.
Feels like spring here. It's been raining for like 4 days straight.
Yeah, we finally finished ours. We've had 2 days of almost 80 degrees, setting new records.
Yeah. It hasn't been warm here. It's been down close to freezing. We were worried about freezing rain and stuff last night, but I mean it's above freezing now. But it's just lightly rained nonstop for about all week since Monday, Tuesday, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was Wednesday. We got up in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a number of days like that. I mean, it felt good outside, except when the wind was blowing, you could still feel the cold in the wind.
That's how it is sometimes in my warehouse. You know, that cinder block holds that cold in quite a bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And next month's my birthday.
Happy early birthday, Josh.
Not until March
Case-
22nd.
Yeah, but I might forget by March 22nd, so I'm going to tell you now.
Yeah.
Get the Facebook notification, probably. Yeah. So.
It's pretty cool. That's my daughter's birthday too.
No, Josh, she's already got a boyfriend.
No, I wasn't thinking of that, you know. Actually, what I was thinking, maybe Don could build me a bunch of turnouts for her birthday.
Troy's got there, said, will he be 13 again?
Yeah. No, I'll be 19. I had to think about that for a second.
Get the calculator out, Josh. Make sure you're right. Yeah, got talking a little bit here just before the show. Here's Andy done all that work, clean up, straighten up, and rearrange, and Jim comes in, and he's doing the same thing, cleaning his workbench up.
It's a good motivating effect. Get you going. A clean space will do a lot for your motivation.
That is
Yeah.
true.
I agree.
It's really easy. I mean, workbench. We all end up with our workbenches with that little foot that everybody's, a single square foot of workspace everybody talks about. But it's real easy to end up when you're working on stuff to, clutter up parts of the railroad. I mean, I can't tell you the number of railroads I've seen that have so much stuff up on the railroad. One benefit of my railroad being up at eye level is it's pretty useless to store stuff up there. I mean, it's way up there, so. It doesn't work good as a bench top. It's not good as a work surface. Not to mention with the lightweight design, it's not. You're not going to get you're not going to throw a 2x6 up there and take a saw and cut it off or something. It's not built for that.
Stick your chop saw up on top of it.
Yeah, that's maybe not totally impossible, but it do a lot of damage. But we build these railroads. I've said this a whole lot of times. Build all these railroads as if you're going to park a motorcycle, but we put half pound, 1 pound locomotives, a couple pound locomotives on them, whatever. But most of the scenery is super lightweight and incredibly delicate. So you could, depends on how you model. But if you're doing this fine scale, if you aspire this fine scale quality modeling, what I aspire to, it's pretty delicate. I mean, it's pretty hard just to clean this stuff, honestly.
Yeah, I could probably lay on mine.
Most people could, but and it's been a badge of honor for modern railroaders to say, I could just build the house up on top of the layout and it would hold it up. But I don't understand the point.
Mine's not quite to that level of strength, although mine's, I'm sure it's plenty sturdy.
Sure.
I'm more interested in the stability than I am concerned about the strength. I mean, I do use plaster mountains on my upper level, but my upper level's all hung on shelf brackets, so
plenty adequate. They're stout, But as you start putting more and more scenery on there, as you put static grass and all those trees and stuff, you couldn't put anything up there that would put any significant weight on it anyway and damage all the work you've done. So.
Yeah, Ron said that, and I was looking at his bridge. I think that bridge was supposed to be horizontal and flat, wasn't it? Instead of having an angle on it.
This one behind me here?
Yeah.
It's an optical illusion, I assure you. Actually, it's curved. That's why it looks that way. It's a curved trestle. That's it. Yeah, you got like a 4% grade going up that bridge.
Yeah.
It does look like it in that camera angle, doesn't it?
That's the goal. Modeling is all about optical delusion. So.
Well, you got much longer left on that contest there, Ron.
Just a little over 2 weeks. No, it's starting to wrap up, I think. Still got a lot of people that need to get videos up, but we'll see how that comes along. We'll see how many procrastinators I've had in the group that are putting them all up the last 2 days.
I see Stu Structures put one up here.
Yeah, he put one up today or in the night last night. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I saw that it was up and linked it in the playlist.
Yeah, Ron down under one, he's asking, you got a count on how many's in there now?
I can answer that 2 ways. Because I asked people to tell me that they were planning to enter by email. So I had 21 people who told me they planned to enter. I think I've got 12 who've actually uploaded at least one video. So really, I've got 12 really entered right at the moment, but I've got about 8 or 9 others who have said they were going to put videos up, and we'll see if that happens. I hope so.
Yeah.
But they are getting kind of down to the wire.
Well, James N said, I wished I knew more about weathering, and I would join. Go ahead and join anyway, James. I mean, that's what the fun of it is.
We learn by doing.
Yeah.
And I suggested in a couple of our videos early on, because I started this just shortly after Ralph started his monthly weathering show. Suggested folks, watch those. That's a good place to pick up some techniques.
Yeah. I guess that's one of the reasons why you started anyway, try to get people more involved in the weathering.
Mm-hmm.
And Stu just popped in, said, good evening, gents. His ears must have been burning. He knew we were talking about him.
Must be.
Yeah. Can't say it works all the time, but it works a lot of the time. Yeah, Stu's comment is, I'm not that good at weathering, LOL. I just like to play.
That's how you get there, playing. This argument's said in all kinds of circles, educated people of everything will tell you. Nobody is born an expert at anything. And at complicated things, playing the guitar, astrophysics, or something complicated, the estimation is 10,000 hours of time committed. You become an expert at any task out there. 10,000 hours. So nobody was born a weathering expert, but they put the hours in. So if you have put the hours in, you will get the skill. For some people that's 1,000 hours. For some people it's a couple hours, whatever it is. But it's a lot of hours, no matter what. I mean, Ralph is as good as anybody I've seen in the hobby, period. And I put him right there with the Gary Christiansens and some of these guys who are recognized as the absolute top dogs in that field. He's right there with them. But the thousands of hours he spent doing that to get there is the same thing anybody else would have to put in to get there. Just a lot of doggone time.
and a little bit of study, some good observation.
Sure.
Combine those things together.
Absolutely, and that reduces your time is the knowledge experience because you.
Well, I'm always careful about that idea that practice makes perfect, because practice doesn't make perfect. If you practice badly, practice makes consistent. So, lots of practice, with a little bit of input, lots of practice with studying the prototype and some prototype photos. That combination, and you will get there.
Well, that's how you could reduce it from requiring 10,000 hours to become an expert. Is that you could piggyback or stand on the shoulders of giants, as the expressions have been used, as what other people have found to work. That's how techniques like oil paint weathering and some of these other techniques that are out there that are so superb have become good, is because people just trial and error for a long time. That was the way you modeled 40, 50 years ago. It was just trial and error until something worked, because there was no precedent. Now that there's some precedent, that we know that oil paint gives you this certain effect, and what the watercolor effects Ralph's getting, and the big ammo products, and the powders that people use. People know how to use these things, and they share those with you. But even with that knowledge, even you can read every book on everything you want, it's still going to require some commitment of hours of time, and some rolling stock that's going to end up in a garbage pail before anybody sees it. That's the nature of the game.
Yeah, Ron.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to some extent, I mean, it's hard to really mess up weathering. Now, you can really overdo weathering, but if you're talking about rolling stock, you're somewhere out there, you're going to find that overdone weathering in nature.
Sure.
What you have to learn is how to apply it lightly. It's easy to weather a car to death. It's a lot more difficult, takes a lot more finesse to lightly weather a car that's been in service for a year or two than one that's been on the rails for 20 or more.
Subtlety is tough. In model railroading in general, in scenery and all kinds of things, subtlety, the nuance and the subtlety. The one thing, and everybody will say this that talks about weathering, and I would say this is true about every aspect of modeling there is, period. Prototype photos. I don't care how freelance you are not a true freelancer. That doesn't exist. A true prototyper doesn't exist either. A true freelancer doesn't exist either, because we're still dealing with equipment that exists in the real world. So if you look at pictures and figure out the things that don't change, the gravity and the physics of how water stains go in certain directions, if you look at the pictures and get that right, with a whole lot of this, the techniques that I think are that I like real well, that I've seen work for me and what I've seen other people do, are these things that are very, very flexible and forgiving, like oil. Oil paints people are scared of it. I was too. Oil paint takes days to dry, literally days to dry. So you could sit there for 72 hours or until you fell asleep and fell out of your chair, working with it, until you either got it right or wipe it off. And with watercolor, take it, put it in a sink and wash it off. You lost 2 cents worth of paint material, and give it a shot again. So.
Right.
Yeah, let's see. Ron down under said, what was he talking about here? Yeah, like they say, I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Yeah, you look at some of Ron's lighting jobs he does on those trucks. He does a great job on that one. Yeah,
He's figured that.
Got a question here from Wally's Weathering. Hey, Wally, how you doing?
Hey, Wally.
Question for you guys. Have any of you looked at the Railfan videos from a drone? There are several guys on YouTube doing this.
Yeah, several. I've got a couple of drones myself. I've bought those too, and it's impossible to fly a drone and look at that video and not see modeling all over that mechanism. That's exactly the view we have of our layouts, and just about never the view we have of the real world. It's a spectacular tool, and it's a great lot of fun. I really enjoy flying them. when it's not this kind of weather, like winter time. Summertime, it's a great lot of fun.
Well, the only one I saw was Joey Ricard's.
Tim Patterson has shared quite a few, but there's that. And that guy he shares with has posted quite a few online where he paces with a train along the California coast, and some of those. It's not perfect, and also, you know, when I rail fed when I was in my teens, you know, late teens, etc. When I did rail fanning and, you know, scanners and all that jazz to kind of chase trains, and we chased some of the steam excursions that would run back then and shoot photos. When that used to happen, you could walk right out on the main line. People walked up and down the railroad tracks. You know, all my young years, we walked the railroad tracks to the store. That was no big deal. Nowadays, that's a felony. So, but a drone is a spectacular way to take a look at railroadish places without breaking the law to do so.
You can still tick some conductors off. You watch a few of those videos, where they're pacing the trains, you see it.
Well, you go try to, you know, Top Gun him and, you know, buzz him. That's
well, and that's the ones that,
yeah. There's with most of this stuff, you can get away with a whole lot if a degree of respect is shown. You know, if you have some respect for what they're trying to do, and there's a reason why these show are in place, because people have died doing things, you know, stupid things. So show some respect, you know, stand back, stay out of people's way, etc. Same thing with the drone. And for the most part, with these cameras that are on these things, the Phantom drone I have has a 4K camera on it. Gosh, you could zoom in, you know, spectacularly. There's no reason for that drone to be right down on top of, you know, right into a spot where it's going to make somebody uncomfortable. It's just unnecessary.
Yeah, I got a couple of comments here. Let me get back up here to them. How you doing, Big Bill? Here you go, Bill. Looks good. Alright, I'm done with showing my new shirt off. Bill's comment is, once you feel that you want to be part of this hobby, then your passion shapes it. Your curiosity gets a hold of you. Then before you know it, you are doing it, and you sit down and behold at a distance and get that, gee whiz, did I do that? And Wally, whoops, well, scroll things. I thought so too, Mark. Yeah, I thought so too, Mark. But what I found fascinating was not so much the trains, but the scenery, especially roads, highways, parking lots. It's like watching a big old train set.
Yep. Yeah, the trains, it's not, you know, there are other ways to view that. You know, many of us have stayed the night at the hotel, 23rd floor, and got to look over some rail yard or something. It's not impossible. Even Google Earth, you know, Google Maps, what a spectacular modeling tool that is. I mean, just superb modeling tool for wrapping your head around how railroads cut lines and how, you know, the civil engineering involved in it. But exactly how the world looks from certain angles, that's kind of hard to visualize all the time. And the drones are pretty inexpensive. I mean, you can spend some money on them, but you can buy some reasonable drones for a few $100. But Google Earth is a really close facsimile to that too. You know, most people think that your quote unquote satellite images or whatever, that's not satellite imagery. That was flyover imagery. The counties pay for a pilot to fly over quadrants, you know, every 2 or 3 years, depending on the finances of a particular county. So that's why they're out of date by a little bit too. There's a couple reasons why they are, but that's imagery from 6,000 feet or something. It's not that dissimilar to drone photography, and that's freely available anywhere in the world without having to drive somewhere and fly a drone to get it. So Google Earth's a pretty similar, but it still doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah, Troy was saying that somebody took some drone footage and some Homeland Security agents told him it was illegal. Not sure if that's true. That's just what I'd heard. And then he said of the Roseville, California yard.
Yeah, infrastructure has some controls over it. It has less to do with the flying. There's some limitation on flying. I mean, I have an FCC license, an FAA license. So if you're going to fly a drone, you're going to pay the few dollars to get an FAA license. That didn't. Well, it was not true when I started flying drones, but that came into effect into 2016, early 2017. You've got to get an FAA license and put a little sticker on your aircraft. So if you run through the windshield of somebody's car, there's somebody to hold responsible. But
yeah, they do that for the RC planes. You're supposed to have a tag inside, with your name and address
if it's over
or whatever, so they can come after you if you cause property damage. But
understandably, but I want people to be, people need to be responsible with what they're doing anyway. And people were doing some pretty irresponsible things with drones, and they're a great technology. I mean, Amazon's going to be shipping packages by them, before terribly long. Fire and rescue, there's all kinds of uses for them, but it's going to require responsible use, or we're going to have some things like the Hindenburg happen, and then they'll just decide, no, drones are a bad idea. Let's destroy that. Because that happens.
Well, didn't they find that girl that was kidnapped a while back by the school teacher in a cabin by using a drone?
Yeah, I heard that too. I didn't hear the details of that. But what's up, Jody?
Do this. There you go, Big Bill.
I don't know what that's all about, but okay.
The show.
Oh, yeah.
Wally says he'd like to find a good drone pilot and send them back to about 1954 in the time machine. Will that stir them up or what?
Yeah, I've said that joking a few times to somebody as a mental exercise. I used to have that for a while. I had that question in my hiring process when I hired people. I said, 3 things that if you could go back 50 years, what would you take back in time? You start talking about 150 years, you might get burnt at you might get burnt alive for a few things. An iPhone 200 years ago would have probably got you burnt alive, but there's some amazing technologies that we never thought would happen. I work in the technology space, and the same thing's happened in modern railroading. Technology has encroached on in some people's view, encroached on our hobby. I think it's a massive positive, absolutely massive positive with virtually no negatives, because it's you don't have to kind of thing. You can still run your railroad in DC if you want to. There's nothing stops you from doing that. So you don't have to do DCC or any of these, or take advantage of any of this other technology. But there's a few things that happen in technology that were kind of obvious. Like the cell phone was obvious. That was going to happen. We knew that 20 years before the first cell phones. It's a two-way radio. Phones have been around, two-way radios have been around. The combination of those two things was obvious. The iPhone was not at all obvious. And that changed. That's the things that changed the world. It's not the obvious things. It's the inobvious things.
Yeah. Big Bill said like Velcro.
There's a few of those. I can't remember if Velcro's on that list of those major inventions. I used to count duct tape and the spork among those, but I have a fondness. I have a fondness for a spork. I think that's an amazing invention, but that's just good comedy amongst friends, and I go on about it. But I do think I do like a spork pretty good. But there's a few inventions out there that were just massively valuable, like Stainmaster, the carpet treatment. That was one of the top 5 most valuable inventions at one time. Had made up to $1 billion off a Stainmaster.
Get back to the inventions of the mile railroading before we get too deep in that.
See, I tie so many things back to model railroading that I see out in the world. I always think, how can I hook this in? How can I tie these things in, into the railroad? And I don't often look for model railroading ideas from model railroaders. So, I mean, I do for model railroaders. I mean, I don't go to a lot of supply sites, model railroad sites, to shop for materials. I look a lot in the real world. See what's out there. Look at what technologies are available that can make that work.
Yeah, David's hobbies and things. We're getting a lot of things in here nowadays.
I started something.
Yeah.
Somebody started something.
I may have to go back to my old name of Wild Thing. Okay, we won't go there.
Please don't.
David's hobbies and things. I'm new to the hobby, starting my layout, which causes more track issues. Changes in temperature or changes in humidity?
Yes.
To both.
Both.
Changes in mind.
Probably the humidity is really the bigger culprit if you have a humidity change issue. But both will cause the expansion and contraction. Both can give you a headache if you don't plan for it.
All right, CPR Train says radio, DCC, and sound has transformed all railroading. KD couplers allowed us to operate. Does anyone remember the first time they used KD couplers or DCC?
Oh, both. I mean, I was young when I got introduced to KD couplers, and I remember that being spectacular. And I moved on and use a different coupler today than KD's. But gosh, I was probably 10 years old or something. This is amazing, because I had those little, Rapido or whatever they were called. Those, little horde hook couplers. Gosh, those things were awful. When I seen KD's first time, I just thought, I mean, that was the bee's knees. And my first real serious introduction to DCC was a couple years ago. I had seen and played with the Waygrow system at the hobby shop years ago, but I didn't have any practical experience actually using it. And the early systems, when I got out of the hobby years ago, were awful, just awful. You had to be very open-minded to see where that future was going to go back then. But when I bought my first little Sprague thing a couple years ago.
South Brooklyn, Big Bill. Why, yes, I do. I remember when Washington crossed the Delaware River.
I saw him cross the Delaware Turnpike on TV just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I'll leave the commercial. I think that's funny.
I see that commercial. Yeah.
Geico commercial.
We all have places to be.
We're all trying to get places.
Yeah, Wally says he's enjoying watching all the videos. Glad he don't have to decide the winner. So
they see, I was smart in that I alleviated anybody from having to pick the winner. Everybody that's involved is judging and it's not just a matter of I like that one, but I actually gave them kind of a rubric, to grade them by. So it kind of gives them. I'm giving them an idea of what I thought was important as they started the contest, and so I'm kind of excited to see how that works out. I hope that turns out to be a good system. It sounded good in my head before I started.
Yeah. CPR.
Lots of things sound good in my head before I do them.
CPR Train. I just got back into the hobby 10 months ago by an NCE radio system. Wish that I had done this years ago.
I've never heard anybody. I've heard plenty of people dispute whether DCC is worth it or whether they should spend the money on a reasonable system, you know, the hundreds of dollars it costs versus buying a very entry-level system. I've heard all kinds of people regret buying a basic system or whatever, one of the more basic, let's say, systems. But everybody I've heard that has spent the money on a DCC system, every single person said they wish they had done it earlier and not waited. I've never heard a person say they regretted that yet.
I have.
I don't doubt there's a person out there, but it's rare.
He's on a pair. Who's complaining about his Digitrack system? Couldn't figure it out or something.
And I would argue if you're struggling figuring out DCC, God bless you if you try to figure out DC, because I'm an electrical engineer, and the reason I became an electrical engineer was because of motor railroading in my teenage years. That's what pushed me that way, because of the things we had to learn to set up a DC system, the MIDI rotaries and wires, and I can't tell you. And listen to Lionel Strang when he's talked about when he converted to DCC all those years ago. And he's argued that he doesn't know much about it, but he wrote a little book for Combach on DCC. But he's even explained that it was so basic that even writing the basics was not that difficult for him. But he said he didn't rewire his layout; he unwired it. So if you're and with DCC, there's plenty of help out there. So you know, I mean, we've done a lot and you know, tried to help people in here many times. We have got several people up and going on DCC. There's a lot of user groups out there for that stuff too. Most of the manufacturers are pretty supportive of it. Everybody wants to see you get your DCC system working and happy. You will be happier in the end.
I can see why some people would struggle with, you know, with the programming end of it, especially as things get more and more complex, you know, with more operability in decoders where you've got, you know, variety of scenarios with different sounds and lighting effects. So I can see the programming side being a frustration, but once you get through that, I can't imagine why anybody would want anything else operationally. It's just,
yep.
I mean, it's more like running a train than DC ever dreamed of being.
And DC was not running trains. You were running the track, and it happened.
Right.
The train did what your track told it to. You weren't running trains back then. You're running track. It's quite different.
Right. And the wireless thing was huge for me. I mean, I invested in the DCC system, and then as quickly as I could, upgraded to a wireless system, and that's fantastic. You know, I love being able to pick up a controller and go anywhere, and I don't have to worry about plugging and unplugging and why is this not connected. And
the only way, in my opinion, unless you have a quite small railroad, just go wireless off the get-go, or at least buy a fairly basic system and do it on your smartphone if you're comfortable doing that. Not everybody's comfortable messing with a smartphone. I mean, I still see people out here with, regular traditional phones. But if you're comfortable with a smartphone, you use a smartphone with even the most basic of systems. And I have many times said I would start with JMRI from the absolute get-go. Not spend not 1 second of time, in my opinion, messing with CV values directly. I would just skip that step entirely. Some people say that you should learn that so that you understand the intricacies of how CVs are assigned and applied. But unless you're doing some pretty low-level stuff, you will never need that knowledge. Start out with JMRI. If you never use it for anything other than Decoder Pro, just programming, and click, save it. It's so much easier.
Absolutely. Listen, I remember trying to convert values, in and out of hexadecimal in the early days of my, and I've still got. In fact, that video I did on organization, people were teasing me about my big binder, But if you looked in there as I was flipping through it, one of the things you saw that's still in that binder is a 4-page hexadecimal conversion chart. That's just still in there. I keep it because it makes me thankful that I don't have to use it anymore.
That's a bad sales pitch for the technology. If model railroaders at large have to learn hex conversion, that's why I would start from the get go. I never programmed a CV. Never, not one time. The first time my locomotive moved under DCC power, it was with the jam or throttle. I have never been any other way.
20 years ago, if you were using DCC, if you were programming anything other than starting, voltage, top voltage, and road numbers, you were going to have to convert because you had to figure out, okay, in order to make this work, you got to have, because they would combine so many different functions into one CV, and you had to know, okay, what are the values that I got to add together, and it was, it was really good for my tutoring skills for teaching my kids algebra, college algebra. So that's about all.
Yeah, I got a couple of comments here. CPR, I'm all in CPR 1959 in Western Canada with a 2-level 600-foot double deck layout. Let's see. And Ari, now you can just use your phone for operating your train with through the wireless JMRI. CP's going, I've run on tons of layouts, and wireless is the route to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, a couple of them were asking him and what gauge he was. He's HO on his. CP said he has 5 wireless throttles and agree that phones will be the way to go.
Yeah, I think that the new ESU throttles really got my attention because it's the best hybrid, because that's kind of what we're missing, some tactile feedback and still a phone. But if I had to go one or the other, if I had to go like a traditional tactile feedback knob and no touch screen, I'm not interested. I have a stack of iPods because that's how I've meant to run my railroad. I got like 5 or 6 iPods, and that's the way I'm going to run the railroad. But if those ESU throttles work out the way they look like they're going to now, then I'll probably head that direction.
Yeah, Wally said he's modeling the South Brooklyn Railroad for a couple of weeks anyway. Chris Reed was saying you can't be in opinions, no complex menus, etc. Oh, he's talking about the, I guess the ESU's throttle is awesome. Yeah, he's conversing with others.
Chris said you get the same advantage with a smartphone. I do agree that a smartphone gets you 95% the way there. And it's probably entirely adequate. And I'm not going to get rid of the iPods that I've got for this. I'm going to use those. I will possibly buy a couple of the ESU throttles. Or if there's only a couple of people operating, we'll use those. Or maybe. I'm not even sure about it because the iPod's a great throttle. I'm quite comfortable. Now, these modern smartphones are just a little too large to be really that comfortable. I mean, to fit your hand and to be able to reach across through the throttle and stuff, they're a little too large, these big phones are. But an iPod is a perfect size. But a phone's fine. And you can buy these little Android phones from Walmart for like $30 or $35. That just you don't need a plan. Just buy, one of these kind of disposable phones and use them. They work fine. Little volume rocker works as a throttle.
I got 3 or 4 in a drawer upstairs, I'll sell you.
They're good throttles for a whole lot of people. And I mean, again, if you're comfortable with that, many people have used, NCE throttles, which I personally prefer. Of the Digitrax NCE war, I'm torn between them. I like the NCE throttle better. I just do. But Digitrax has one of the most complete catalogs of products for, you know, the product line is so mature on Digitrax. It's a really hard sell. But the ESU system, it's got a really nice balancing act because it's a really exceptional throttle that I like probably even better than the NCE throttle. But it has Digitrax, you know, essentially Digitrax accessory support with LocoNet integration. So
yeah, Wally, now I understand, he said earlier he was doing the South Brooklyn. He's actually weathering 2 of Big Bill's locomotives. And they're talking about, Wally said, Dave Piper, I've been looking at Rail Pro 2. I'm liking it, what I'm seeing.
I love what Rail Pro is doing. My fear is it's a single company building a proprietary system. If something happens to them, or they decide to update their technology, or some manufacturer in Shenzhen, China decides to not make a little part they need, that's a little nerve-wracking. And while the Rail Pro decoders are backward compatible with DCC, that's a big plus. That's awesome. What you've got is a decoder that's nowhere near an ESU low sound decoder in quality of sound or what have you. It's not on the same caliber, in my opinion, personally, as the ESU low sound decoders are a step above about everything else out there as of recently. And so you got a fairly basic decoder that you're having to use with a DCC system. So you end up doing a lot of rip and replace if something happens. And that's what, you know, so I've heard from one of the podcasts, that's what happened to the original release of Tsunami. Is some manufacturer in Shenzhen stopped making some very small subcomponent they needed to make the original line of Tsunami decoders. I don't know that to be true, but I heard that. It makes a lot of logical sense, and I know that happens in the electronic space all the time. So that makes me nervous about non-standardized systems. And I love wireless and battery power. I'm sold on battery power. And in 20 years, maybe even 10 years, I absolutely think when you buy a locomotive, on the box, with the list of specs, will be the milliamp hours of the batteries that are. I think that will become standard fare to have batteries and wireless. I think that's the future. But I think it needs to happen in a standardized way, that multiple vendors and manufacturers can cross-support devices. Proprietary just about always loses in markets like ours.
That's been one of the big issues with MRC's DCC system over the years, is the fact that it doesn't play well with others. And I use, you know, MRC Proprietary Advanced Squared,
Yep.
and I love it, you know, as far as its functionality and especially for its price point. But, you know, apart from, I mean, it'll communicate with decoders from anybody, but apart from that, it until recently does not play well with others. And,
you know, as far as
They're getting better. I mean, JMRI has preliminary support for it, but the problem with being so late to the game as MRC is you've had years, if not a decade or so, however long JMRI has been around, to see maturity between JMRI and NCE and Digitrax, etc., come out there.
right.
MRC, you're starting from behind. And the biggest thing that hurts that is most of the people who are writing software for the free open source JMRI software, most of those people are not using MRC systems because of that handicap that MRC put on them for so many years. So they really handicapped themselves by not opening up earlier. Standards are the key. Standards.
Well, MRC started with a handicap anyway because of the whole, you know, original Prodigy fiasco that they wanted to claim was, you know, this fantastic, sophisticated DCC system when it first came out, and it just was not. Now the Advance was. I'm real happy with Prodigy Advance, and I literally bought the Prodigy Advance when it first came out, and I have upgraded as I went. I need to get an upgrade to the newest software now because I cannot computer interface with my railroad. I use JMRI Decoder Pro, but I have to do it on a programming track. I cannot do it on my layout until I get an upgrade to the software of my system, which I need to do. I just haven't gotten it done.
I kind of want to go back to the Rail Pro thing real quick. That's why I jumped in, because I was typing in the chat and my fat fingers weren't really doing the trick. So the thing with Rail Pro is that it's really neat. I agree with that aspect of it. But right now with DCC, you're getting open source in a nutshell. Because whether you use TCS, you use ESU decoders, NCE decoders, Tsunami decoders, they'll all work with a DCC system, whether you're running DCC++, NCE, ESU, whatever. So you're getting that standard, which essentially open source, because the NMRA came out and said, okay, we're going to standardize this, and all the manufacturers have to follow this in terms of certain scales, obviously, HO and Z, whatever.
I don't think there's any difference in the protocol. It's just a standard protocol.
It is. Right. But with Rail Pro now, like you said, you're getting the proprietary. So now you're going back in time. Now, and I'm speaking from firsthand because I'm in 3-rail O scale. All the systems, both systems in 3-rail O scale are proprietary. Okay. So you now have to have 2 command systems to run different machines, or when you buy a $500 diesel, you have to switch the board out. Okay, so I'm speaking from firsthand from this. So in terms of people who are running in 2-rail O scale, narrow gauge O, and whatever it may be, running DCC, you have the ability now to run whatever command system you want and whatever decoder you want. It doesn't matter. But when you go into Rail Pro now you're locked into their command system and their board. And people really need to wake up and look at ESU, because ESU at so many levels is breaking the market in terms of DCC decoders. It's sick. Look at Joe's show last night and what he showed in N scale. Okay, if you look at the 4.0 local sound decoders and what you could, if you buy the programmer, and what you could do with those decoders, it's sickening. And not everybody wants to. Not everybody has different wants or different needs. Obviously, we all don't want the same thing or don't need the same thing, or we have different things in terms of the hobbies concerned. But if you're into command control or DCC, you really need to be looking at what Loxound's doing and how they're changing the game in terms of decoders. And I really think that using something like Rail Pro, you're limiting yourself to one system and one command system. But if that's what you want, go ahead and do it. I'm just saying, in terms of everybody, if I go to Andy's house for some reason and I bring an engine over, if I have an HO engine, it's DCC, I can run in his layout. And I guess with Rail Pro, if I probably bring my little controller with me, I could do that. But
and they are a little bit backward compatible. So Rail Pro, they didn't originally, but they have now added backward compatibility with DCC on their decoders if you have it. But it's a really basic DCC implementation. It's like having the most basic, or my understanding is it's like having the most basic Digitrax decoder that you could get with some sound. CPR Trade had the best reference here for any of the guys that have followed DCC through the years. All the guys that I follow, my heroes is Model Railroading, the Tony Custers and Alan McClellan and the Ohio Southern, Henderson, whatever his name was, Bill Henderson, something like that. All those guys were using Dynatrol. It was a proprietary system, and it died. It just, it doesn't take much for you to be painted in a corner with proprietary. Standards just about always win. Rail Pro does have some neat features. Automatic consisting, automatic load balancing between locomotives, but they're getting really close to having that. The ESU command station has bidirectional communication, and it has some of those features. It doesn't have the automatic speed matching, but with consisting and stuff, it has some of those features built into the ESU DCC system. And I expect we'll get that in DCC soon.
I guess what my ultimate point is, and how in terms of model railroading, it needs to be like hobby electronics, where a lot of things are open sourced. because it's a hobby. Number one, it's a hobby. Okay, we're not trying to buy medical equipment that we're trying to make millions of dollars on, or anything like that. It really needs to be the ability to the consumer to do what they want or what they need, and not have a proprietary item that you have to shell out, $300 and some for, and then next year the company goes bankrupt and you just switch to all this stuff. And I'm not saying that DCC is the best system out there. Does it need to be updated? Absolutely. Is it old technology? Probably. But it works right now. And it's cross compatible with multiple manufacturers. So
what we got going on in chat here?
they're probably all cursing at me now.
No?
No, they're talking about Steve locomotives. That's kind of interesting. I've weathered every freight car on the layout, but I still got a few. But I haven't weathered the locomotives yet. I've been a little nervous about doing steam locomotives too, because there's a lot to get that right, and there's not a great amount of color photography. There is some, but probably plenty of it, but not a great amount of high quality color photography. The wealth of color photography is not there for steam locomotives like it is for a Jeep 40.
All right, here's one here from Troy. He's asking, with DCC, I have an NCE system. Will the Digitrax Wi-Fi thing work on it?
The ESU thing you're talking about? The ESU throttle, is that what he's talking about?
No, he's talking about the Wi-Fi box, I think.
Yeah, Digitrax Wi-Fi.
No.
Will it work on NCE?
No. The throttles are not cross-compatible. The decoders are, and the stuff that's on your track bus, accessory decoders, anything that speaks the DCC protocol is compatible. It's part of the standard. But the throttle bus was not standardized. That they let when the NMRA ratified the DCC standard, they allowed manufacturers to standardize on whatever throttle bus they wanted. Digitrax used LocoNet, and NCE has what they call the throttle bus. I think that's all the name of it I've ever heard. So, and they're different standards. Now, the future is bright for a standard bus there for throttles, but I don't think that it matters in the era of Wi-Fi.
I think he's talking about the Digitrax Wi-Fi box. Digitrax came with the Wi-Fi box that you can connect your smartphone to the box and then send the commands. What people got to realize is that box is not spitting out the DCC protocol. Right. What it's doing is it's reading like an app like Y Throttle, or what's the other one?
Engine Driver.
Okay, that protocol was defined by JMRI, so they're more than likely using that protocol to the Wi-Fi box, and the Wi-Fi box sends a different command type to their DCC system, the Digitrax system, yep. And then their base station is then creating the DCC signal based on the commands that's coming out of the Wi-Fi box.
Yeah, sending it over the throttle bus though. The problem is you don't have a compatible throttle bus.
So you can't mix and match between a Digitrax Wi-Fi box and the NCE or whatever Troy has. My recommendation is if you want a Wi-Fi compatible system, spin up a JMRI instance on a Raspberry Pi or something, and you can run a throttle, a simple throttle through that, which then will talk to your NCE system. That's probably the best way to do it, unless NCE has something that you can buy off of them if you didn't want to do that.
Not yet.
But in terms of what Andy's talking about when he was talking about cabs, if you look at OpenLCB by the NMRA and what that's supposed to be doing, that was supposed to be able to allow you if you want to use, say, an NCE cab with say a Digitrax base station, that was supposed to allow you to do that, but that's not there yet. That's still in development. Yeah, I've done a lot of research on it, but you still need GMRI, or you need a complex node, because that works on a node mesh configuration, I guess you can say. And the nodes, there's no manufacturers who are making open LCB nodes yet that are at that level yet, where you can take an NCE cab and run a Digitrax base station. And that's another I guess that's a con of DCZ. I mean, that's
LCD. So,
well, Chris's younger brother just chimed in.
Who's that?
The one that's living in California, Robert.
Oh,
everyone should.
That's the brother I don't talk about. But anyways,
where'd he go? Everyone should just go with DCC++. It's a lot easier and a lot cheaper.
It is, but
a lot cheaper.
It is, but people have that tendency of being afraid of what you need to do to set that up, and it's not that hard. It's very easy, and I agree with him. That's what I have, but.
So it runs my layout, and I'm happy with it. But I'm reluctant to recommend the ++ because of the sheer fear factor for people.
Yeah, and I guess I said it in the chat before I came in, when you guys were talking about complexities of setting up DCC versus DC and stuff like that. And I think if we quit every time something got tough, we wouldn't get anywhere. You know, so sometimes it's good on a personal, on your own level, and I think this way, to say, hey, I can learn this, and just try it and go do it, and you may surprise yourself at the end of the day.
You guys will be talking me through it eventually, because I'm still DC.
Well, I mean, there's still a place for DC being valuable for certain things. If you want to run a single locomotive, that's it. And DC is not so bad for that. And for many people, it's entirely adequate. Assuming that you don't care much about sound, not that you can't have any, but that you can't have much control over your sound. Or that you don't want to run multiple trains, or that you don't want complex engine controls. DCC gives you a lot of stuff, but if that stuff doesn't matter to you, a small switching layout, etc., I would do DCC either way, because I built my ++ system for $15. But I was also getting back into the hobby. So everything I'm buying, can either decoder right away, or is going to come with DCC on board. Stu Structure said it's cheaper if you're starting out with it. In his situation, he's got tons of old brass DC to change over. It's a lot of work and effort, let alone the parts cost. That's a big undertaking. If you have a lot of DC equipment, it's tough to say it's tough to say you're going to have to go through that. But boy, the benefits are really worth it if you over time slowly start working through.
There's one situation where I might advise somebody to build a DC layout, and that would be if you've got a kid, middle school, young high school kid who's really interested in model railroading. You ought to build one, just a door top of 4x4 something in DC with block control, so they learn something about electricity. It's a fantastic way to learn something about electrical wiring, and then you can always go back and convert all that stuff to DCC. When they get a little older and you convert the thing over.
No, Ron, I'm gonna disagree with you, because I think that you can still get the same benefit with DCC.
Yeah, yes and no. I'm not going to argue with you about it, but
I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just saying I think you get the same benefit. I think you can get the same benefit with learning electronics.
yeah, I
hides the most. I have to say DCC hides all the basic electronic stuff from you. It abstracts it. When I was young, I learned about wiring up toggle switches to turn blocks on and off, and eventually multiple cabs. And it's simple. Follow wires, reasoning, common sense reasoning skills that you learn from understanding that basic electronics. And DCC does abstract the vast majority of that from you.
But there's so many other things on the layout that you can still get those basic electronics things from, is my point.
No doubt about it. That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
Hi, Ralph.
Howdy.
Hey, Ralph.
How is everyone tonight? I see we have a good discussion going on. I'm not even going to jump in. You guys got this one.
I haven't had to say anything, Ralph.
Yeah, okay.
Because you got the big mouths in the room, me and Andy.
There is that, but I'll tell you what, the argument in favor of DC is a pretty weak argument these days. There's the only arguments out there that justify DC are I have an extremely simple layout that runs a single train in a loop or on a small switching layout, or I've had a railroad for so many years that converting everything over is cost prohibitive. Those are two pretty valuable arguments. Other than that, if you're building a layout right now or have started building a layout in the last decade or so, it's really hard to find an argument against DCC.
What I'm gonna be honest with you. Besides that, I'm a tech guy or whatever. What really makes me attractive, and I'm not gonna say DCC, I'm gonna say command control, is everything comes alive. The realism is there, and that's what I'm saying. If you don't know,
Chris.
Huh?
I can agree with you on that. It does come alive, but I'm not tech savvy enough to jump into it just yet.
Neither was I, and I learned. I researched, I learned, and I asked questions, and that's my point. Is you don't have to be you learn as you go kind of thing. It's like with anything. It's like with anything else in life. You learn as you go.
I'm gonna utilize that time to actually build the railroad, and then kind of look at it. And
right, and that's everybody. Like I said, everybody has their own priorities, But my point is, if you don't know what look sound is, I would highly suggest that you just go on YouTube and look it up, because with even the diesel features especially, because what they have going with their diesels, everything just becomes more alive than it ever did before, and it just brings that realism up so much more on your layout.
Another thing I'd say is I fully understand, build the railroad. But if you are going to go DCC, take it into account earlier rather than later. That don't mean you have to go buy the DCC system. Just wire correctly for DCC, because the wiring for your track work is different. It's simpler. There's benefits and trade-offs and pitfalls either way. So I'll refrain from saying it's necessary. It is simpler. I won't say there's necessarily less of it, because to do DCC correctly, it needs a few wires to do it well. But it's different. You wire it differently.
Yeah, you do. You guys sucked me in.
Ralph, I gotta be honest with you.
DCC, you were right, Andy. DC, if you do DC, you're going to learn a lot. By going DCC, it simplifies everything. All you need is 2 wires below your track. You run feeders from those 2 wires, bus wires, up to your track. You're running trains. You want to add other features, it's easy to do. Whereas in DC, you really have to think about how the power is going to go from here to there without shorting out.
Yeah.
And to run more than one locomotive in DC, you have to really think about it, because now you have to block their track in sections and have different power packs to help, because you can't control 2 trains with 1 power pack unless it's got 2 controls on 1 unit. So you then have to go around the whole layout, blocking everything, whereas in DCC, all you need is 2 wires and 1 controller. And most of the controllers nowadays will control more than 1 locomotive.
And it's not that expensive. So I bought a DC power pack when I was getting back in the hobby 3 years ago. At a hobby shop, it's like 70 or 80 bucks for an MRC power pack. Nothing special, just maybe it's 50 or 60 bucks. MRC power pack. But you could buy an NCE power cab or a Digitrax Zephyr for $120, $130-ish dollars. 150 or less, let's say. So for twice what I put into a DC power pack, I could have had a DCC system right out of the gate.
But my question too is maybe most of the people in this room care about the electrical side of things and how it actually works, or whatever. But how many people out there really do care about that?
Well, that's it. Each modeler has their own little expertise that they excel in. Some of them love electrical. Some of them, it's like a forbidden taboo. Mm-hmm. Call somebody in to do it for me, because I don't even want to touch it.
And my point a while ago with doing that, you know, if you had a young kid to teach him, was just because that's some valuable knowledge and understanding to have. Whether you ever do anything with electricity or electronics or not, it's valuable. It's just like it's like an automobile. It is valuable whether you ever work on a car or not to have some working knowledge of how a car works. It's valuable whether you ever do any electrical work or not to have some basic knowledge of how electricity and electrical circuits work.
And I totally agree. And I totally agree with you, because the whole STEM thing, model railroading has a lot to do with STEM, because it teaches you all that.
Right.
All that. And I totally 100% believe in my heart that it does. But what I was saying though is you know, you have to put lights in your buildings. You have to put, all this stuff. If you want to use servos to control your turnouts or whatever, you can still learn the basic electronics stuff without diving into Andy's rabbit hole of knowing Ohm's law, maybe not Ohm's law, but something ridiculous in terms of electronics. That maybe I would want to know. You know what I'm saying? But you're right. I totally agree with that.
Oh, it's totally worthwhile as a model railroader to learn the calculus equations that describe the Casimir effect inside of a capacitor. That's awesome. Do it.
Shut up.
You don't need to do that stuff.
There's always one. There's always one.
Ralph.
You deserve a Denozo there.
Ralph, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go dig out my TI graphing calculator from college.
That's it. The point is, you don't need to do. The point that I'm trying to make is, you don't need any of that stuff. You get to do it. You don't have to. You buy a DC system, or DC if you want to, but a DC system, and never do any. It's as simple to set up as when you first got a smartphone and know the basic setup there. This is really simple technology. You can learn the intricacies of this stuff if you want to, but you don't need it.
Troy has a good point. Troy says, I would still suggest blocking sidings so some yard tracks are not on, so your locomotives are not all on at the same time.
Well, sure.
And that's an issue in DCC if you have power to every locomotive you have on your system, which sometimes, depending on your system, how many amperage you have, whether the starting draw is going to exceed your amperage of your unit from all those engines. So you put them on sidings that you can turn off. So this is another issue where you're going to have to know some of that electrical stuff from DC.
Right.
So
that's
you can switch those tracks on and off.
That's my point why a DCC layout will probably teach you just as much as a DC layout would.
But there are some DCC solutions for that stuff too. There's a little box that I've heard very few people talk about called an aux box. That you could use to get. You don't like those? I haven't bought one yet, so I can't say. But
all it is a stationary decoder.
Right, with higher current, basically relays, but they're solid stuff.
8 terminals.
Yep.
And
so
you turn them on and off.
Yep. And you can do it with an Arduino. I probably will do it with an Arduino.
And you can do it with an analog switch too. So
you can if you want a panel and such. It's nice to be able to flip your phone out, especially if your staging's in another room. It's nice to be able to control it from both rooms.
Can you flip your phone? You still have a flip phone?
No,
I thought you were an iPhone guy.
Well, flip it out. Yeah, there you are, Rob.
No, he's an F phone guy. He's an F phone guy.
A flip phone guy. That's because he's a Trekkie.
I'm going to tell you right now, we all need to get a hat like Andy and wear it one night on the show.
I got one.
I've got one buried in a closet somewhere.
No, not me.
Not Ralph.
Really, Ralph? There's a bottle of wine in it for you.
Whose make?
Whatever you want. I'll give you a stick of super soda. I know a way to Italian's heart. Super soda or wine. That's the way to Italian's heart.
You got to
depends on the way you look at it. Depends on the way you look at it.
Well, the nerve of some people's kids, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Robert's saying, so here's the basics. So what kind of statement is that? Come on, Robert.
Chad came at the nose and knocked him out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, I find it funny we're sitting here arguing about electrical, and I went to wire up this little church, and I plugged the wrong plug in to test the light. I plugged the soldering iron back in.
Well, that's the other issue. Like I said, you got guys that are really tech savvy, and then don't know the difference. Not saying you don't know the difference. You obviously found out.
Just step away from the electrical outlet.
Yeah.
It hasn't shocked me yet.
Dave Piper was still talking about the RailPro briefly for a second, he said, so I don't want to go back too long on that, but he said, what I was liking about RailPro is the wireless RF decoders possibly go a battery for dead rail. ESU and others have wireless decoders yet. Absolutely not. Nobody but RailPro. There's 2 companies out there with the system, RailPro and somebody else. I can't think of the other one. That have a system that's similar to DCC. There's several other battery systems like SCAB. Miles Hell has done several videos on the SCAB system that he uses on his for direct, but it's not nearly the same as a DCC system. Tam Valley had, and they've had a lot of problems bringing that to market with the FCC and stuff. Wireless decoders are really tricky because of the FCC regulation. If you build them yourself, if it's a hobbyist, quote unquote hobbyist item, the FCC regulation on it is very friendly. If you want to make a commercial system that's wireless, the FCC stuff is supposedly tougher. In my mind, I think you just go pay the money to get all the licensing for it, and you go on and make the things. But RailPro's done it, other people have done it. But that's why I think Wi-Fi is the way to go with the wireless communication back to the locomotive. 2, it's just not being done, and that's a big undertaking. So the 2 options you kind of have to have wireless and battery dead rail right now are a RailPro system or another proprietary system of some kind, SCAB, whatever else. Or stick with DCC across the board and use the wireless DCC system that Tam Valley had, and now that third party to Tam Valley is producing. So
yeah, deadrailinstalls.com is now the seller of the Tam Valley system.
That's still a little on the hobbyist side, a little bit. I mean, but the great thing is you could use ESU low sound decoders or TCS wow sound or Tsunami 2s or Economies or whatever decoder you like with it. All it's doing is transmitting whatever would be going through the track as the DCC control signal. It's sending that over the air, and then however you choose to get power is however you choose to get power, whether that's track power, batteries, supercapacitors, or big solar panels on flat cars. Whatever does the job for you, you can run your trains that way. It gives you the most flexibility, but it's still DCC. You can still use standardized decoders. And if something happens and that company goes out of business that's making some part, the wireless part is gone. And and that may be replaceable. You know, we're going to see more happen with Bluetooth. It's not there yet. And I think we're going to see some stuff happen with Wi-Fi too. But it's
the redneck railroader has got a question here. My flux capacitor has 3 prongs and I only have 2. What do I do?
Oh, you've got to have an adapter. It has to have 3 prongs.
Return it.
Well, no. I know what the problem is.
Connect it to the center point.
Is it a 1982 DeLorean? Because I think you've got a compatibility problem there.
All you need is a blender.
We may get an open source dead rail system yet. I'm currently working on one, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But dead rail is a totally different topic in its own, and I think Andy would agree with me on that. It's a very right now at the beginning of its era, and there's not a lot. There's a lot of things going on, and there's not a lot of things going on, and there's a lot to think about.
It's only at the beginning for indoor use.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Guys have been using it on garden rail systems for ages.
Yes.
RC. All they did is adapt what the RC car and plane guys, boat guys had been doing for decades before. That system is 50 years old and it works.
But the Germans, but the guys in Europe who are running outdoor railroads in G scale are using Wi-Fi in their dead rail systems. And
yes.
But the one thing you got to remember is that their locomotives are huge, and you have all that room to put battery packs in, whatever you need. Where even in terms of me, we're dead rail for ON30, and I'm an O scale, and my ON30 equipment is pretty much the size of an HO equipment. Is space, and that's the real major factor is that you got to put at least 3 batteries in there because you need if you're loading lithium ion, you need 11.1 volts. You need to put your decoder in there now. You need to put in whatever you're going to use to get your signal to the decoder. So
probably sound.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things.
It's supposed to have 13.4. It will run with a little less, but a decoder is designed around running with 13 to 13.8. So shoot for 13.4. That requires there's some electronics in there. If you're savvy, you can do that, no doubt about it. You can get these, these batteries that are all the rage that are in the bottom of a, an 8650 battery that's in the bottom of a Tesla. That's there, but you're in DIY space.
Yep.
I'm comfortable with that. Chris is comfortable with that. A bunch of us are. That's not competitive to a commercial system.
But talking DC now. When you get into dead rail, the electronics, your electronics technology needs to go up because now you need to understand about battery technology, and when you talk about different batteries, it's a very big realm. And like I said, and we could probably Andy and I could probably do a show like this where we just sit around and talk about it.
Well, actually, Dave Piper says, Andy, sounds like a project for the Arduino show.
Probably the plus system would make a good show. The DCC++ system probably would make a good show because that's really well standardized. It's been created by a bunch of guys that have well documented it. It's out there. I've already built one. Robert's already built one. Numerous of us have built plus systems. Chris has got all the hardware for plus there. Built one and got all the hardware for some options on plus there. We're playing with some really tricky builds of plus. Ralph's got a Sprague on a Raspberry. That's a good solution too. All of those would make good electronic hobby shows.
This is my plus system right here.
Yeah. Dead rail, on the other hand, is more of a conversational thing because because there's the whole built solutions. There's just a lot of ways to go. Dead rail's really complicated. That's a great conversational topic, but as a workshop topic, plus or the Sprague systems, like what Ralph Scott, or like Marty builds, either of those would make great shows, because that's everybody. There are a bunch of those working systems within our community. People actively using those working systems. Dead rail is something a lot of us are fascinated with, though.
The only people in this community that. Go ahead, Ralph.
This basically is a computer in itself, minus the monitor and keyboard. This is the one that Marty built for me, and this has JMRI built into it.
Yeah.
He also runs his modules. He has one of these on each module, and they talk to each other.
It's a computer.
That's what they run their trains with.
Yep. And all that is a Raspberry Pi with a Sprague hat.
Yep.
Running JMRI on it, and what Marty does is he spurs up a server on the JMRI side. They load their panels up on tablets on the web browser, and they control their modules.
And I have a very, very similar setup, because I have a Raspberry Pi at a similar cost. I have a Raspberry Pi. That's a $35 computer running JMRI.
That's Raz 3.
That my Raspberry Pi 3. That's what I've got to. Raspberry Pi 3.
Yeah.
Running JMRI. Instead of Sprague board that hooks into the GPIO pins, though, I have an Arduino that has a motor control shield on it. But it's pretty doggone similar at the core technology. The form factor is ever so slightly different, and my two pieces, they're just two separate pieces with a wire run between them. But electrically, or component, they're the same stuff. It's the same basic premise. And I have a Raspberry Pi running JMRI. I have a separate DCC systems. Yours plugged together, might have a wire between them. That's the only distinct difference.
And for people out there that don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, here's an example of a Raspberry Pi, right here. So this is what Ralph showed is he has a board which is called a hat, and what it is a board that stacks on top of this. So these pins here are what they call GPIO, which are general.
Did a purpose input output.
Yeah, thank you. I had a brain fart with the P. It stacks on here, and then this allows JMRI to talk to the Sprague hat, which then generates your DCC signal and then puts it out to your tracks. But these are, like Andy said, $35 computers. They run. There's just a little SD card. All I have is a little SD card in this. This is just a spare one I have. And you can put it on your network. There's a Cat 5. This is a Pi 3, so it's a built-in Wi-Fi on it. And there's an HDMI output on it if you want to put a monitor on it. They're great little computers.
And it has a graphical interface with a full JMRI on it. You can put a monitor keyboard, open up Decoder Pro. Or you can open up your iPad and connect to it and use your iPad as the front end to open up Decoder Pro and do all your programming with it. And once you're up to a graphical interface, once you brought that SD card, which is like a very simple, free little bitty piece of software on Windows to write that card, you come up to a desktop, you've got a web browser, you've got all the regular stuff that you would have on a desktop operating system. It's a full-on computer, albeit not a horribly fast one by modern standards, but it's entirely adequate for running.
No, but what people do with these is pretty impressive. What they're good at running JMRI. They're good at running basic home automation systems. Andy and I use it for our home automation systems. So they do the job, and like I said, they're $35. You don't have to worry to go out and buy a $200 laptop to run your layout.
Or if you've got a laptop, the great thing is, even if you've got a computer, I do. I'm sitting on my laptop here now with the monitor. I've got a Mac desktop in my workshop. I was going to do it that way, but I have a dedicated JMRI. So if those computers are off, if I turn them off, if I'm moving things around, whatever I'm doing, JMRI runs completely separate from it. So no update that I do to my computer, nothing that I make a change on my computer can mess with my JMRI. That Raspberry Pi does one job and one job only. JMRI.
And your main computer, if you go on JMRO website and read about it, you know, you can actually run another, if you on your laptop, if you're in your house, you can really run JMRI on that laptop and still communicate with this board that's running the layout. So, like Ron, I'm going to use Ron as an example because he has broad shoulders. He said before about how he wants to program on the main. Okay, I don't program on the main. I program on a programming track. So my idea is I'm going to build a programming track that's in my shop or whatever, and I'm going to have another little DCC++ system on that. But that's going to be communicating with my main JMRI setup. So now you can have a remote programming track, and you're not tied down to one spot when you do this. So there's a lot of, and that's what I'm saying to people is they always say, well, I'm not tech savvy enough. Well, a lot of people aren't, but like for me, I'm not a weathering guru, but I'm willing to give it a try, you know. And as you progress with it, and you learn a little bit as you go, bits and pieces, you'll get there. And to run JMRI is not a hard concept. You don't need to be a tech genius.
You don't have to invent any of this stuff. This is the software that's out there. I've said for a while in this community, one of the great things about Arduino is it's not the Arduino. It's great in and of itself. But the community of model routers that are out there that have already built crossing gate flashers, signal systems, accessory controls, DCC decoders, you name it. So much of that stuff has already been wrote and already been shared. You don't have to and you can still do a little DIY, build yourself a box, do it very, very inexpensively, you know, $2 versus $50. It's back cheaper. And all the hard work, all the invention work has been done by other modelers and being shared, like the DCC++ system, or the Sprague Pi system. All that's done. All the work's done on that. You just got to stick a few parts together and follow 6 instructions that are half a minute long.
Yeah, now that the work is done, now it's let's see how many different things I can do with this.
And I think you get pretty much the same level of the same thing as you would get if you bought a commercially available DCC system. I don't see a difference.
Other than having to build the thing, that's the difference. It's already done for you in a manufactured system.
I'm not against that at all. I support manufacturers.
Neither am I.
Well, buy an ESU system. Miles Hale has a line that I love to say when it comes to a lot of modeling out here because it makes so much sense. There's no better way to say this. If somebody makes something at anything close to a price point that you're willing to pay for it, just buy the thing. If they don't make it, then you're down to scratch building it. Now, when he's talking about detail parts or structures or things like that, but I think it applies to every part of this. If somebody makes what you want at a price point that you want to pay for it, just go buy it and you'll be happy. But there's a lot of things in custom stuff on your layout. There's some of these things that just aren't out there, and you may have to very well build it. Or really hard for me to justify buying a $1,000. I priced the NCE system that I was going to buy for the layout, wireless, a couple, 3 throttles, whatever it was, $1,200. I built my DCC system for like $25 all in. And I built my DCC system for about $25 all in. Plus, I had a handful of iPods, so you'd have to buy a few phones, or if you've got a few phones in a drawer to maybe control it. I'm not saying that's at all for everybody. I just couldn't justify dropping $1,200, but I don't even have a lot of track lane right now. Maybe I will. I've been looking at the ESU system. I'm totally interested in where that's going, but I'm still going to build a whole lot of Arduino stuff for the layout because there's a lot of stuff that's either not out there, or I have a really hard time justifying spending $75 to buy a layout lighting controller when I can build it for $2.25 on an Arduino. That really gets to be a hard argument.
Well, I tell you what, we've done hit the hour-and-a-half mark. Had a really good discussion. A lot of these guys in here really liking this, and I've been listening and got an idea. Robert, when the show's over, can you jump over into this room, please? I got an idea for you. To end this, let's go with Ron Boytz down in Australia. Getting back to the y'all were talking about the Raspberry Pi. He goes, booger. You mean not one of them? Wait a minute. You mean not one of them things come with whipped cream on top?
It can, but it's extra in money.
Yeah. And it has to be put on just so.
Yeah, electronics and whipped cream, not the greatest combination.
And just as a last word on DCC, there's all the simple way of doing it or the inexpensive way of doing it, and then there's the expensive way. If you're going to go out and purchase a system, don't just purchase it because it's within your price point. Check around and see the people around you that maybe fellow modelers, see what they run. See if you belong to a club. See what type they have. And that way, if you get the same type, if you have a problem, you now have a support system. You have somebody you can go and ask questions to.
Absolutely. Or what your local hobby shop is doing, so maybe they can help you. Support circles are great. In my case, there's no hobby shop around. I don't know of a modeler within 50 or 60 miles that I know of. I just figured out what was best, what worked for me. But if I had some other modelers in my area, it would definitely affect my decision process.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with another one last thought. Not to try and outdo Ralph or anything, but there is, you know, I got to advertise, Ralph. There is
true.
Good support group that's real easy to get to, and you don't even have to leave your house. It's called YouTube Mall Builders, and we do nightly chats. Even if you don't have a webcam, you can still join in. You just have to communicate through the chat, but a webcam would make it a lot easier.
A support group, the DCA group, the DC Anonymous group, we're getting people off of DC every night of the week.
Hey, I didn't get my coin yet, Johnny.
He had to what?
Said he didn't get his coin yet.
Yeah.
Oh. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and bring this one to an end. Appreciate everybody coming in. Appreciate everybody here on the panel being here tonight. We've had a really good discussion. And with that said, I want to say go to YouTubeMallBuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for the Tuesday and Wednesday shows. Those shows air at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday show is at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And be sure and click on the e-magazine and sign up for an email notification when it comes out. And our next show is with our very own Mr. Ralph here. February the 27th is Weathering, Workbench to Mainline. And we all know Ralph has got a good show, so you want to be there for that one. That's at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The 27th is a Tuesday, so mark your calendars. So I hope everybody has a good weekend, and we shall see you on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Bye.
Night, John.